So we'll talk about being in a romantic relationship where you're both addicted to heroin. I've only done this once, but once, believe me, is enough. Now, this took place toward the beginning of my time with heroin. So I was still experiencing a lot of like the glow and the really good feelings that you tend to lose over time and that you endlessly chase forever and ever. I was still experiencing a lot of that novel heroin pleasure. So the relationship was doomed from the start because I was misattributing all of these good feelings to being caused by her when really they were being caused by the heroin. We started off pretty much from when we first met to, when we became an official couple. We were just doing heroin all the time together. And yeah, again, you're tricked into thinking that, that what you're experiencing is love or something. And you're like, oh, this must be what love feels like. I must never have felt love before. This is the one, all of that stupid stuff, when really it's just a good batch of heroin you have. And so, yeah, you get into a relationship, and obviously heroin comes first for both of you. That goes without being said. And you pretty much your whole relationship is based around, you're just drug buddies, you're drug partners. And, it's not a romantic relationship. It's a drug friendship where perhaps you're being intimate together. So what starts to happen? How do things go very badly? Well, one thing, let's just get this out of the way. When guys do heroin, they lose their sex drive very quickly. It doesn't happen to everyone, and when you mix it with other drugs like stimulants, or if you have someone who's doing like meth and heroin daily, then the meth might cause the sex drive to hang around. But if a guy's just doing heroin, like, sex is the last thing you think about. It just crushes your libido, and this doesn't seem to happen as much for girls. So you're going to quickly fall into a situation where there's different attitudes toward the physical side of the relationship. Either the guy doesn't want to be intimate because the heroin physically is not allowing him to perform, or it just becomes a situation of like, why have sex when I can do heroin because heroin feels so much better. So the girl's going to not have her needs met, and it may cause her to look outside of the relationship to get those needs met, or anything like that. But there's just going to be a mismatch there. But also, like, it gets really dodgy because, like, a lot of couples that use together, they end up sending the girl to buy the drugs. And it's not necessarily the case that, that like, their girl's being used. Well, yeah, there are guys out there who will send their girlfriend to go buy the drugs, just in case, she's arrested, but it's really more like the girls being objectified, because dealers will give girls better deals and everything. And yeah, it's just stuff like, like, if I were in a relationship and we wanted to buy a car as a couple, and I was like, how about you go down to the car dealership and you talk to the salesman, because and try and flirt with the salesman and get a better deal for a car and everything. Like, that's you're not going to want to do that in a normal relationship, because you don't want to be sending your girl out to a situation where she's objectifying herself for some type of financial gain. Like, you don't feel like a man doing that. But when you're on heroin, you're like, yeah, go see the dealer, flirt with him, whatever. Because again, like, the heroin, it takes over. I was in situations where, in the times that I would go meet the dealers, and that's another thing too, like, it never got to the point where, like, the girl was doing any kind of prostitution or anything, but it was there and ready. I had multiple dealers who would basically be saying to me, like, the day you're ready to turn that girl out, the day you're ready to, it just come to me. I'll make $100, you'll make $100, and there'll be drug money on top, that kind of thing. And, we never did it, but just the heroin numbs all of the feelings. Like, again, under normal circumstances, if someone tried to approach me and tell me that, here's a proposition to turn your girlfriend into a prostitute, like, there's going to be like there's going to be outrage. There's going to be confrontation. I'm going to try and punch that person or whatever. But when you're on heroin, you're just like, not today, not today. Maybe not today. I'm still good financially. But so yeah, that and like, and then too, just all the money goes to heroin. Like this girl, she was living with my mother and I. This was like, I mean, it was like 10 years ago probably at this point, but like she was living with my mother until my mother kicked her out. And then she found a room to rent on Craigslist, I think it was. So she was renting a room on Craigslist. And she was working minimum wage and trying to rent this room. And, despite the fact that, well, I mean, we were just in tough times and my mother took her in, but then she kicked her out. And like, I felt, I was spending all of my paycheck on heroin. I didn't think well, maybe I should help her pay the rent for this room. And it was just this really depressing, dirty apartment complex. And it was looking back on it, it was like really sad because she was living as a third wheel with this couple, and this couple was obviously in very hard times, and that's why they were renting their extra room out. But like every time I went over to visit her, like this couple would have less stuff in their apartment. Like one day their TV was just gone, the next day their couch was gone, the next day their stereo was gone. They were like selling everything off, and it was like this downward spiral. And it was just really sad. Like, I mean, they weren't drug addicts. They were just normal people going through financial hardship, I think. But, like, so, and, like, then their apartment was, like, infected with insects. So, like, my girlfriend's room was infected with insects. So she was getting, like, bug bites all over her legs that were, like, really painful. And it, like, didn't even faze me because all I was thinking about was heroin. I couldn't even... if I got $100, I would spend it all on heroin. I wouldn't be like, well, maybe I should, take a third of this and try and treat my girlfriend's problem due to these freaking bed bugs or whatever. And I mean, obviously, this girl cheated on me a lot. Like looking back, I put two and two together. I had suspicions at the time, and I know for a fact now that it happened. But I don't care. I don't care at all because, I mean, we weren't a couple. I was not treating her well. I deserved to be cheated on. Or, I mean, I don't know, do people ever deserve to be cheated on? But I definitely didn't deserve to be in a relationship. And then, too, it's like, you go to buy the drugs, and let's say that you buy like 10 bags of heroin, and you're going to do 5 and 5 for each other. Like, yeah, you're going to go into those bags, and you're going to... if she's getting 5 bags, you're only going to really give her 3 because you're going to shave 2 of them off and give them to yourself. Like, you're going to steal from your partner. It's obviously going to happen. I mean, I had prescription benzos at the time, and like she would steal my benzos all the time without asking me. And it's just, again, it's just drugs come first. And yeah, it's just and then being like dope sick together, like that's awful. It's freaking horrible. I know for a fact that she was like stealing from my mother when she got dope sick. If she stole from my mother, and I know she stole from my mother, and then she gave me drugs that she bought with the money she stole, does that count as me stealing from my mother? Yeah, you could argue that too. So it was just all bad. And like I got clean. Here's the other thing we should talk about this. So the relationship ended technically because like I got arrested and I was whisked off to rehab per court orders. And I was just, that was when she was living in that rundown apartment, and it was just one day I was gone. And so I go to rehab, still under this stupid idea that I'm in a decent relationship, and like I'm in the rehab and I'm trying to call her, and her phone's dead, and I'm trying to call her. It sucks being like locked up in a rehab out of state, having no clue what's happening to your girlfriend because you've left her, and then you get clean, and all of your emotions and feelings come back, and you become a decent person again, and you're just flooded with all of the, oh my goodness, I screwed this girl over, I treated her very horribly, and I want to like talk to her to make sure she's okay, but you just can't. So, yeah, I spent the whole time in rehab having no clue what was going on with her. Got out of rehab and couldn't get into contact with her. And what had happened was, I mean, it's crazy how this kind of thing happens. Like, while I was in rehab, she went to a bar one night and she met a guy who, because she got kicked out of that room that she was renting because she couldn't pay it. And she went to a bar like that night or the next night or something and met a guy, gave him her sad story. He was like, oh, you can come live with me for a little while. So she goes and lives with this guy. And now it's 8 years later or whatever. She's married to him. They have a kid. She's clean, I think. It's a happy little ending for them. So that's good. But yeah, I got away with it. In my relationship, it was bad, but it can get a lot worse when you're dating an addict. Especially when the sex work and everything comes into play. Yeah, I've heard horror stories from people I know